Guys, there is a knife that a lot of you had asked me if I was going to do a review on, and I was planning on doing it, but now I can do it on my own because I received one of these Military Armament Corporation Mark IIs for Christmas. So let's turn this around. Oh, early Christmas. Let's turn this around and take a look at it from above. All right, guys, like I said in the intro, this is the Military Armament Corporation Mac Mark II. So this is basically a copy that they're doing of the original Gerber Mark II dagger. Now, there's some differences, but the handle is identical. The sheath is very, very similar to the original, and the blade is really similar to the original. So let's go ahead and get this box out of the way and take a look at my early Christmas present. Wow, having a hard time today. The struggle bus has arrived. It is late in the evening at any rate. So this is a 440, as you can see here, 440C. I don't know how well you guys can see it. 440C reproduction of the Gerber Mark II. It is a little bit more wasp waisted than the originals were. Even some of the ones that were heavily wasped were not quite as heavily contoured in. But it is a pretty faithful representation and reproduction, especially the handle. Like I said, I have handled a bunch of my buddy Tino's real world, like 1960s, 70s Mark IIs, and it's very, very faithful to it. It does not have the cat's tongue grip on it. So these are a fairly affordable version of this knife. I think they are just at $99. They are done by Military Armament Corporation in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, I don't know where the knife is actually being made, but that's where the company is. And they're famous for doing shotguns, from what I understand. Had never heard of this company until I saw these. But this thing is a lot of fun. So you've got a traditional style sheath. We'll talk about the glue on that in a little bit. Faithful reproduction of the original sheaths with a belt loop and also a web belt connector. So if you guys have ever seen the web boats with all the holes on them, that's what that's for. Same thing with like a canteen holder and things like that. So we can get the sheath out of the way and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But this is a 440C blade and aluminum handle, just like what you got on the original Mark II. The Mark II was a wasp-waisted dagger, which this is, I think, I'm 100% sure this is way more narrow back here than the originals. But I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with what they did with this. It is a very piercing blade. It is sharp. It's double-edged. It's almost zero ground, but it does have an edge bevel. You can see the edge on it's not great. I do need to touch that up on something and do a couple things with it. It is sharp, but that is a very coarse, almost burr edge on that. It does not have the 5-degree cant that the original Mark II dagger did, but this is really faithful to some of the others. In hand, nicely balanced. To tell you the truth, it's as balanced and as well balanced as the originals. I like the aesthetic. I'm sorry, I'm knocking things over in the background. I like the aesthetic, even though this is way narrower than the originals were. I like the aesthetic of it. I like the way it looks. It gives it a very, I don't know, sci-fi look to it. And the grind is really consistent, which is hard to do on a dagger. That central ridge a lot of times poses some problems when you're grinding down to the edge. The grinds seem to be fairly consistent, and it is fairly thick blade stock. So it's going to be a robust knife. You've got the two-tone like you would see on the Mark IIs. It is, like I said, aluminum. It's basically just been painted, and it's not something that is, this is not something that's going to be like an outdoors knife. But if you're looking for a knife, for a military style knife, or if you're trying to recreate like a costume or like cosplay stuff, this may be something you're looking for. In and out of the sheath. The sheath is, like I said, a pretty faithful reproduction of the original 1960s, 1970s style sheath. And the cross strap and snap are fairly decent. It is a riveted construction and sewn. And like I said, you have the original old school, connector here for a web belt And it is a fairly attractive color sheath. So, you know, the coloring on it is pretty nice. And it does have a spot to put an extra attachment here, like if you want to lash this to your leg so it doesn't slap and make a bunch of noise. So the knife itself, like I said, pretty good. I do have a couple of negative critiques. And even though this was a Christmas present, I said it again, Christmas present, there are some negative things about this. So let's go ahead and let's turn this around and do flip side of the story, flip side of the knife. So first and foremost, I don't know comparatively to how the originals were done and how this one is done. I don't know how the actual tangs were done on them. This one, you can see there's a whole bunch of excess epoxy that was left around that. So I don't know how much actual tang is in this, but it sounds a little hollow. Next thing, and this isn't just with this knife, it's with all of the new modern Mark IIs, even the Gerbers. I think they should have stuck with something more akin to the cat's tongue grip where they had the molten steel that was stuck on it, because this is slick. It's slick. And I may try to figure out a way to do something with this to roughen it up, even if it's, I mask all this off and I blast this and give it a sandblasted finish, even though I'm not a fan of sandblasted finish on a handle. I think it would be a little bit more grippy. The next thing, while I like the aesthetic of it, I wonder how much strength is lost in the excess material removal of this, wasping it down this, you know, excessively. I think that you may have induced a weak point, but I do, like I said, I find it to be incredibly gorgeous like that. Next thing, I wish it had the 5-degree cant of the originals. It just gives it a more authentic look and all of that. Now, the next couple critiques, you can't get upset. This is not a real expensive knife. It's $100 reproduction of a Gerber, but the sheath is not the greatest. The originals weren't either, I have to admit. The originals weren't either. They were stapled, then they were riveted like this. But mine popped, and I have only had this for a day. Mine popped a thread, and there is no glue holding these together. The only thing holding it together is the stitching. And the reason I put glue around the entire thing, and I think I'm going to reach out to Michael Spangers over at Spirit of the Bear before too long. I put super glue along all of this just to hold them in place. That is just, now that is wax. I waxed this to waterproof it. But that is just regular sewing thread. It's not what I would expect to see on leather stitching. So that is a definite weak point. And the fact that there is no leather glue in between these layers, it's kind of a deal. It's kind of a big deal. And then this leather is so incredibly dry. Like, it is very, very dry. I did put a little bit of beeswax on it to try and just moisturize it a little bit. I think I'm going to have to soak this with linseed oil and everything to soften up and treat this leather. But it is extremely dry, which can lead to cracking and things like that. So the sheath on this, I think, is the weak point of the knife, but you can always order a sheath if you want. But as far as like, is it a yup or a nut? Would I recommend it if you're wanting to get a gift, or if you've got somebody that is like a military history buff and they like the knives that were carried, not necessarily issued, but there was a lot of the Mac V guys that bought these with their own money and carried it. Would I recommend it? Yeah, it's a yup, especially like at $100. You just can't miss with it. And surprisingly, like I said, it came fairly sharp for a dagger. So yeah, it's a yup. I wouldn't pass up on one if you can find them. I would wait and go to the actual Military Armament Corporation website and see if you can find them, because people are selling them on the secondary market for more than that. But if they're not available and you want one, the secondary market would be the way to go. So guys, let's turn this around, do some final thoughts, and send you out about your day. So yeah, there you go, guys. I don't hate this. It's nowhere near what the original Mark IIs were. I kind of like it better than some of the newer releases with the serrations and stuff. I absolutely do dig it. The only thing that I can really say that's a negative, because this is not a very expensive knife, they're about $100. I'm not a fan of the sheath, like I said, at the tabletop. But as far as the aesthetic and the overall feel of it, it's not a bad knife. If you want to pick one up, they shouldn't be that hard to find. Just go to Military Armament Corporation and look for this knife. All right, guys, that's it on this one. It's getting late. It is late in the evening. I want to get out of here. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. Tell me why. Lots of ways you can support the channel. Like, share, subscribe, drop a comment. Use the affiliate links down below. Everything from GP Knives, Knife Ship Free, Blade HQ, and including my Amazon store. All of those don't cost you anything extra at checkout, but they support the channel, especially that Amazon store. Take that link, pin it to your browser, use it for all of your Amazon shopping. For all your knife stuff, use the other ones. There are a couple that have discounts built into them. Coffee Brand Coffee and Tempered Trail both have a 10% off discount. And I have a coupon code of Crazy Sharp, all one word, all lowercase, that will save you 10% at KATSU Knives, Rosecraft Blades, and Ferrum Forge Knife Works. So utilize those. I have a membership down below, get you early access to videos, exclusive content for the guys that are in that membership, and a premium tier sharpening tutorial series that's on there. You just have to look it up. I have a public Discord down below. It says join the community. You can check that out. You can reach out to me. Anything you want to reach out to me, ask me questions, DM me. If you've got knives you want to send in for review, you can find me there. I'm in there occasionally, about once a week. I check it. Guys, that's it on this one. I love you. I'll keep it clean in the comments section. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. And I will see you in the next video.